Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. I never thought a spilled glass of orange juice would be the thread that unraveled my entire life. But sometimes the smallest moments reveal the deepest truths about the people we think we know. The sound of leather cutting through air is something you never forget. It's sharp, quick, followed by that distinctive snap that makes your stomach drop even when you're expecting it. But hearing it directed at your 6-year-old son while you're helpless to stop it, that changes everything. My wife took out belt for our son when he spilled juice. I found myself thinking, the words burning in my mind as I watched Tommy's face crumple in terror. The orange juice was still spreading across our kitchen floor, a sticky golden puddle that seemed insignificant compared to what was about to happen. "Rebecca, stop!" I lunged forward, but her sister Linda was faster, snatching my phone from my hands as I tried to dial 911. "It was just a belt." Linda laughed, her voice sharp with mockery. "You're raising a brat. You should thank your wife." Her husband Greg nodded for the kitchen doorway, his massive frame blocking any escape route I might have considered. "She's right, Mike. Kid needs discipline. You're too soft." They had no idea what I would do next. But then again, neither did I. Let me back up and tell you how we got here, because the belt incident wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment everything became crystal clear. I'm Mike Holloway, and 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. 34 years old, successful construction company owner, beautiful wife of 8 years, and a son who meant everything to me. We lived in Millbrook, a small town outside Nashville where everyone knew everyone, and reputation mattered more than money. My construction business, Holloway Builders, had grown from a one-man operation to a crew of 23 men. I'd built half the custom homes in the county, including the sprawling ranch house where Rebecca, Tommy, and I lived. I was proud of what I'd accomplished, especially considering I'd started with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox my father left me when he died in a factory accident when I was 19. Rebecca and I met at a church function when I was 26. She was 24, a kindergarten teacher with honey blonde hair and the kind of smile that made you forget your own name. Her family had money. Her father owned 3 car dealerships across Middle Tennessee, but she'd chosen teaching because she wanted to make a difference. I fell hard and fast, and when she said yes to my proposal after 6 months of dating, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. The first few years were good. Really good. Rebecca was everything I'd imagined in a wife. Supportive, loving, and when Tommy came along, she seemed to transform into the perfect mother. She quit teaching to stay home with him, and I worked extra hours to make sure she never had to worry about money. But looking back now, I can see the cracks that started forming around year 5. Rebecca began spending more time with her sister Linda, who'd married Greg Paulson, a man I'd never liked. Greg was one of those guys who never worked an honest day in his life, but always had money for expensive trucks and fishing trips. He dealt in investments and opportunities, though no one could ever explain exactly what he did for a living. Linda was the opposite of Rebecca in every way that mattered. Where Rebecca had been sweet and gentle, Linda was sharp and calculating. She had this way of making cutting remarks and then laughing them off as jokes. "I'm just being honest," she'd say whenever someone called her out. The change in Rebecca was gradual. She started criticizing the way I disciplined Tommy, or rather, the way I didn't. "He needs a firm hand, Mike," she'd say. "Boys need to learn respect." I'd grown up with a belt across my back more times than I could count, courtesy of a father who believed children should be seen and not heard. I'd sworn I'd never lay a hand on my son, and I'd kept that promise. Timeouts, taking away privileges, talking through problems, these were my methods. They worked fine until Rebecca decided they didn't. The first time she hit Tommy, he was 4. He'd drawn on the wall with crayons, and before I could stop her, she'd smacked him across the face so hard it left a red handprint. I'd been furious, but she'd cried and apologized, saying her sister had told her she was being too lenient. "Linda says I'm spoiling him," she'd sobbed into my chest. "She says you're making me weak. I should have put my foot down then. Should have told Linda to mind her own business and insisted Rebecca never hit our son again. Instead, I talked to Rebecca about gentler methods, thinking I could guide her back to the woman I'd married. I was wrong. The incidents became more frequent. A wooden spoon for talking back. A yank on the arm for not eating his vegetables. Each time, Rebecca had an excuse, and each time, Linda was behind it, filling her head with ideas about old-fashioned discipline and modern parenting weakness. I started documenting everything, taking photos of bruises, writing down dates and times. I wasn't sure what I planned to do with the evidence, but something deep inside me knew I'd need it eventually. Then came a morning that changed everything. Tommy had been excited about having Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg over for Sunday brunch. He'd helped me make pancakes the night before, measuring ingredients with the serious concentration only a 6-year-old could muster. When breakfast time came, he was bouncing in his chair, chattering about the cartoons he wanted to show Uncle Greg. The orange juice glass was full, maybe too full. When Tommy gestured enthusiastically while telling a story about his friend at school, his elbow caught the glass, sending it tumbling across the table and onto the kitchen floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca's face went dark in a way I'd never seen before. Without a word, she stood up, walked to the pantry closet, and pulled out the leather belt I didn't even know she'd bought. Rebecca, no. My voice was calm, but my heart was racing. It was an accident. Accidents have consequences, Mike. Her voice was cold, controlled. Tommy needs to learn that. Tommy started crying before she even took a step toward him. I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't mean to. Sorry doesn't clean up messes, Thomas. She never called him Thomas unless she was angry. Turn around. That's when I moved, reaching for my phone to call 911. I'd had enough. This was going to stop, right now, even if it meant having my own wife arrested. But Linda was faster, snatching the phone from my hands with a laugh that made my blood boil. IT was just a belt, she said, her eyes dancing with amusement. You're raising a brat. You should thank your wife. Greg stepped into the kitchen then, his 6'4" frame filling the doorway. At 41, he was built like the college football player he'd once been, though his muscle had gone soft around the edges. Still, he was intimidating when he wanted to be. She's right, Mike, he said, crossing his arms. Kid needs discipline. You're too soft. I looked at my son, cowering in his chair, tears streaming down his face. I looked at my wife, belt in hand, her jaw set with determination. I looked at Linda, still holding my phone, smirking like this was the best entertainment she'd had all week. And I looked at Greg, blocking my path to help my son. That's when something inside me broke. Not snap, broke, like a dam giving way after years of pressure. Get out, I said quietly. What? Linda's smirk faltered. I said get out. Now. Greg pushed off from the doorframe. Now hold on, Mike. Get out. The roar that came from my throat surprised even me. Get out of my house. Rebecca lowered the belt, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mike, what's gotten into you? What's gotten into me? I turned to face her, and she actually took a step back. What's gotten into you? When did you become someone who terrorizes our son? When did you start listening to, I gestured at Linda, her about how to raise our child? I'm just trying to. You're trying to beat a 6-year-old for spilling juice. I knelt down next to Tommy, pulling him into my arms. He was shaking. It's okay, buddy. Daddy's here. Mike, you're overreacting, Greg said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. I stood up slowly, Tommy still in my arms, and looked Greg directly in the eyes. If you're not out of my house in 30 seconds, I'm going to make you leave. And Greg, you don't want to find out what that looks like. He must have seen something in my face that convinced him I wasn't bluffing. After a moment of tense silence, he grabbed Linda's arm. Come on, let's go. Linda threw my phone on the kitchen counter with more force than necessary. Fine, but don't come crying to us when he ends up in jail because you couldn't teach him right from wrong. They left, and the house fell silent except for Tommy's quiet sniffling against my shoulder. Rebecca stood in the middle of the kitchen, still holding the belt, looking lost. We need to talk, I said. What I didn't know was that our marriage was already over. The woman I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And what I was about to discover would make the belt incident look like a minor disagreement. That evening, after Tommy was in bed, Rebecca and I sat in our living room for the hardest conversation of our marriage. She tried to justify what had happened, explaining how Linda had convinced her that my permissive parenting was damaging Tommy's development. She showed me articles, Mike, studies about how children need structure and consequences. Structure doesn't mean terrorizing him with a belt, Rebecca. It's not terrorism. It's discipline. The way I was raised. The way you were raised. The way I was raised was wrong. That's why I promised myself I'd never hit my son. We went in circles for hours. She couldn't see that what she was doing was abuse, and I couldn't understand how the woman who used to sing lullabies to our baby had turned into someone who could make him cower in fear. Finally, around midnight, Rebecca went to bed. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how to fix this. That's when I heard her phone buzz on the kitchen counter where she'd left it charging. I shouldn't have looked. I know that, but something made me get up and check the screen. It was a text from someone named D with a heart emoji next to the name. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Greg and Linda are perfect alibis. Your husband has no idea how often we've been together. My world tilted sideways. I scrolled up through the message history with trembling fingers, and what I found made me physically sick. Months of messages, plans to meet, declarations of love, pictures I never wanted to see. D was Derek Massey, a guy I'd gone to high school with. He was a real estate agent now, divorced, and apparently had been sleeping with my wife for over 6 months. The worst part? Linda and Greg knew. They'd been helping cover for her, providing alibis for her shopping trips and girls' days out. I sat in my kitchen until dawn, reading through message after message, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time through text exchanges. Rebecca had never loved Derek in high school. He'd been a nobody, a skinny kid with thick glasses who got picked on by guys like me. But somewhere along the way, he'd grown into himself, built a successful business, and caught my wife's attention. The messages revealed a plan that made my blood run cold. Rebecca and Derek had been discussing divorce proceedings, figuring out how to maximize her settlement. She'd been documenting every purchase I made, every business decision, preparing to paint me as irresponsible with money. Linda had been coaching her, teaching her which lawyers to contact, how to present herself as the victim. They planned to take Tommy. They planned to take my house. They planned to take half my business. And they thought I was too stupid to figure it out. By the time Rebecca woke up that morning, I made copies of everything. I transferred money to accounts she couldn't access. I called my lawyer, my accountant, and my most trusted foreman. But more importantly, I'd made a decision that would change all our lives forever. I was going to destroy them all. Rebecca came downstairs around 9, already dressed in her yoga clothes, hair pulled back in the ponytail she wore when she was trying to look younger. She was meeting Derek, though she didn't know I knew that. Good morning, she said, not meeting my eyes. I'm going to yoga with Linda, then shopping. I'll be back around 5. Have fun, I said, not looking up from my coffee. She hesitated in the doorway, maybe sensing something different in my tone, but then left without another word. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway before I called my brother Danny. Danny Holloway was 2 years younger than me, but twice as smart when it came to certain things. While I'd built houses, he'd built a private investigation business that served clients across 3 states. He specialized in infidelity cases, corporate espionage, and what he called reputation management. If you needed to know something about someone, Danny was your guy. Mike, what's wrong? He could hear it in my voice immediately. Everything. I need your help. 3 hours later, Danny was sitting in my kitchen, looking through the evidence I'd gathered. He whistled low when he saw some of the messages. Jesus, Mike, how long has this been going on? 6 months that I can prove. Maybe longer. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. What do you want to do about it? That was Danny. No judgment, no lectures about forgiveness or working things out. Just straight to business. I want to know everything. About Derek, about Linda and Greg's involvement, about the lawyer she's been talking to. Everything. That's easy enough. But Mike, he paused, choosing his words carefully. What's your endgame here? You file for divorce. You'll probably get joint custody, maybe full custody if we can prove the abuse. You'll keep most of the business, the house. You'll be fine financially. I thought about Tommy cowering in his chair, about the belt in Rebecca's hands, about the months of lies and planning behind my back. That's not enough. What do you mean? I met his eyes, and I could see he understood before I even said it. I mean, I want them all to pay. Really pay. Not just lose half their assets in a divorce settlement. I want them destroyed. Danny was quiet for a long moment. Mike, be very careful what you're asking for. Once you go down this road, there's no coming back. There's already no coming back. The question is whether I'm going to be the victim or the one holding the hammer. He nodded slowly. Okay, give me a week. What Danny uncovered in that week was worse than I'd imagined. Derek wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was stealing from his clients. As a real estate agent, he had access to empty houses during showings. He'd been using those houses for drug deals, taking a cut from a dealer named Carlos Vega, who operated out of Nashville. Derek's real estate business was basically a front for money laundering. Linda and Greg were deeper in the drug trade than I'd suspected. Greg's mysterious investments were actually loans to dealers, with interest rates that would make a mob boss blush. Linda handled the books, washing money through fake consulting contracts with Derek's real estate company. The best part? Rebecca knew about all of it. The messages Danny found on Derek's computer, obtained through methods I didn't ask about, showed she'd been helping plan expansion into neighboring counties. My sweet kindergarten teacher wife was going to be a drug money accountant. They'd planned to use my business as a front once they got control of it in the divorce. Holloway Builders would become a cash-washing operation for half the dealers in Middle Tennessee. I'd built that company with my bare hands, and they wanted to turn it into a criminal enterprise. But Danny's investigation also revealed something else. They were all careful. Very careful. The drug money was hidden behind layers of legitimate transactions. The evidence was there, but it would take a lot of work to prove in court. They'd probably get away with it if I just turned them into the police. That's when Danny made a suggestion that changed everything. You know what would really hurt them? He said, showing me a photograph of Derek's warehouse on the outskirts of town. If someone anonymously tipped off Carlos Vega that Derek was skimming from the drug money. Is he? Oh yeah, about 20%, according to the books Linda keeps. Vega just doesn't know it yet. I stared at the photograph, understanding immediately what Danny was suggesting. You're talking about getting them killed. I'm talking about letting criminals handle criminals. We just provide information. What happens after that isn't our responsibility. It was tempting. So tempting I could taste it. But I shook my head. Too easy. I want them to suffer first. I want them to know it was me. That's when I came up with a plan that would destroy all four of them systematically, legally, and completely. It started with Tommy. The next Monday morning, I took my son to see Dr. Patricia Westbrook, the best child psychologist in Nashville. I brought along the photographs I'd taken of his bruises, the documentation of Rebecca's abuse, and a detailed account of the belt incident. Dr. Westbrook was a small woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of gentle manner that made children feel safe. Tommy opened up to her immediately, describing not just the physical abuse, but the emotional terror he'd lived with for months. Mommy gets so angry, he told her, sitting in a chair that dwarfed his small frame. She says I'm bad. She says I make Daddy weak. My heart broke listening to him, but also hardened my resolve. Dr. Westbrook's report was devastating for Rebecca. She recommended immediate supervised visitation only, documented probable abuse, and suggested Tommy needed extensive therapy to deal with the trauma. I filed for emergency custody that Wednesday. Rebecca was served with papers at Derek's house on Thursday morning. Danny had been watching them, and he made sure the process server arrived just as Derek was leaving for work, still in his bathrobe, and clearly having spent the night. The photographs were beautiful. Rebecca called me screaming. You can't do this. You can't take Tommy away from me. Watch me. This is about Sunday, isn't it? About the belt? Mike, I was just trying to discipline him. No, Rebecca. This is about you being an unfit mother. This is about you abusing our son while planning to steal my business with your drug dealer boyfriend. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. See you in court. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Thomas Brennan, the best family attorney in the county and a man who owed me several favors from construction work I'd done on his house. Tom, they're going to come at me hard now. Are you ready? Mike, I've been ready since you showed me those text messages. They don't have a prayer. He was right, but it didn't stop them from trying. Within 24 hours, Linda had convinced Rebecca to hire Catherine Walsh, a shark of a divorce attorney from Nashville who specialized in taking men to the cleaners. Walsh immediately filed countermotions claiming I was abusive, that I'd been having an affair, that I was hiding money from the business. The affair allegation was particularly creative. They claimed I'd been sleeping with my office manager, Sandra, a 62-year-old grandmother who'd been like a mother to me since I started the business. The money-hiding allegation was closer to true, though not for the reasons they thought. I had been moving assets, but into trust funds for Tommy's future, not to hide them from Rebecca. Walsh also tried to get the abuse allegations thrown out, claiming I'd coached Tommy to lie about his mother. The war was on. For 3 weeks, it was brutal. Walsh attacked my character, my business practices, my relationship with Tommy. She painted me as a controlling husband who'd snapped when his wife tried to assert independence. Rebecca played the victim perfectly. She cried on cue, spoke in soft, wounded tones about how she'd only wanted what was best for Tommy, how she was devastated that I turned her child against her. Linda and Greg provided sworn statements about my violent temper and erratic behavior. They described the Sunday morning confrontation as me flying into a rage over normal child discipline. Derek stayed in the background, but his presence was felt. He was funding Rebecca's legal fees, giving her a place to stay, providing emotional support. They were careful not to be seen together publicly, but Danny's surveillance caught them together constantly. The first court hearing was a disaster. Judge Morrison was an old-school guy who believed in traditional families and second chances. He looked at Rebecca, blonde, well-dressed, tearful, and saw a mother being torn away from her child by an angry husband. He ordered temporary joint custody with supervised visits for both parents pending a full investigation. I walked out of that courthouse furious and humiliated. Rebecca and her legal team looked smug. Linda actually smirked at me in the hallway. That night, Danny found me in my garage, taking my anger out on a piece of wood I was supposed to be turning into a toy chest for Tommy. They think they've won, I said, not stopping my work. Have they? Not even close. I set down my tools and looked at him. It's time for phase 2, which is, we burn their whole world down. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. I didn't need to prove Rebecca was connected to Derek's drug operation in family court. I just needed to make sure the right people found out about it at the right time. Danny and I spent the next week setting up what he called the domino effect. We carefully leaked information to the DEA about Derek's operation, providing just enough detail to get them interested without making it obvious where the tip came from. We also reached out to Carlos Vega through intermediaries, letting him know that Derek had been skimming from the drug profits and that Greg had been charging him inflated interest rates on loans. We provided evidence of both, taken directly from Linda's meticulous records. But the masterstroke was what we did with Rebecca's divorce lawyer. Catherine Walsh was dirty. Not drug-dealing dirty, but tax evasion, client fund-stealing dirty. Danny's investigation had uncovered a pattern of her borrowing from client trust accounts to cover personal expenses, always planning to pay it back before anyone noticed. She'd done it with Rebecca's retainer fee, using Derek's drug money to pay for a vacation to the Bahamas while claiming to be working on the case. We documented everything and sent it anonymously to the Tennessee Bar Association. Then we sat back and watched the fireworks. The DEA raid happened on a Tuesday morning. Derek was showing a house to potential buyers when federal agents swarmed the property. They found 2 kilos of cocaine hidden in the basement and enough financial records to trace the money laundering operation back 6 months. Derek folded immediately. Within hours, he was giving up everyone he could think of, including Greg, Linda, and half the dealers in the county. Carlos Vega's response was more direct. Greg's truck was found in the Cumberland River that Wednesday, with Greg still in it. The police called it a robbery gone wrong, but everyone knew better. Linda disappeared, just packed a bag and vanished, leaving behind her house, her car, and a husband's body floating in the river. Rebecca was arrested Thursday morning as an accessory to money laundering. The DEA had found evidence of her involvement in Derek's financial records, including plans to use Holloway Builders as a front operation. Catherine Walsh was disbarred and arrested Friday afternoon for misappropriating client funds. By the following Monday, Rebecca's entire support system had collapsed. Derek was in federal custody, Linda was gone, Greg was dead, and her lawyer was facing criminal charges. I picked her up from jail after she made bail. She looked terrible. Unwashed hair, pale skin, clothes that had been slept in. The confident woman who tried to take my son and my business was gone, replaced by someone who looked broken and desperate. We drove in silence for 10 minutes before she finally spoke. I'm sorry. For which part? Abusing our son? Cheating on me? Planning to steal my business? Or getting involved with drug dealers? She started crying. I never meant for any of this to happen. Yes, you did. You planned all of it. Derek said. Derek's facing 25 to life in federal prison. What Derek said doesn't matter anymore. I pulled into the parking lot of the diner on the edge of town and turned to face her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over full custody of Tommy to me. You're going to waive any claim to the house, the business, or any other assets. You're going to plead guilty to whatever charges the federal prosecutor offers you. Mike, please. I'm not finished. In exchange, I won't release the additional evidence I have about your involvement in the drug operation. Evidence that would turn your accessory charge into conspiracy and add another 10 years to your sentence. Her face went white. What evidence? I handed her a folder containing printouts of text messages Danny had recovered from Derek's computer. Messages that showed Rebecca had been actively involved in planning the expansion of the drug operation into neighboring counties. She read them with shaking hands, her face growing paler with each page. How did you get these? Does it matter? The question is what you're going to do about it. She was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the traffic passing by. If I sign everything over to you, you'll keep these secret as long as you stay away from Tommy and me. Permanently. What about visitation? He's my son, too. I leaned back in my seat, studying her face. She still didn't understand. Still thought there was a way to negotiate, to salvage something from the wreckage she'd created. Rebecca, you terrorized our 6-year-old son with a belt because he spilled juice. You planned to steal my business and turn it into a front for drug dealers. You cheated on me for months while pretending to be a loving wife and mother. What exactly makes you think you deserve visitation? I made mistakes. You made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. She signed the papers that afternoon. The federal prosecutor offered her a plea deal, 3 years in minimum security prison in exchange for testifying against Derek and providing information about the money laundering operation. She took it. Derek got 28 years. He'll be 67 when he gets out, assuming he survives that long in federal prison. Linda was never found. Danny heard rumors that she'd made it to Mexico, but I didn't care enough to verify them. Catherine Walsh got 18 months for stealing client funds and was permanently disbarred. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, watching Tommy eat pancakes and laugh at cartoons on his tablet. He was seeing Dr. Westbrook twice a week and was getting better every day. The nightmares had stopped. He wasn't afraid of sudden movements anymore. He was learning to be a kid again. The abuse charges against Rebecca had been dropped as part of her plea deal, but it didn't matter. She was gone, and she wasn't coming back. Danny stopped by around noon, bringing coffee and donuts from the shop downtown. "How's he doing?" he asked, nodding toward Tommy, who was building something elaborate with Legos in the living room. "Better. Good days and bad days, but more good ones lately." "And you?" I thought about it. 6 months ago, I'd been a happily married father who thought he had the perfect life. Now, I was a single dad running a construction business, while my ex-wife served time in federal prison for drug-related charges. "I'm good," I said, and realized I meant it. "Any regrets?" I looked at Tommy, completely absorbed in his Lego creation, safe and happy and free from fear. "None." Danny nodded. "What they did to you to him, they got what they deserved. They got justice. Is there a difference?" I thought about that for a moment. Rebecca was in prison, but not for abusing Tommy, for money laundering. Derek was in prison, but not for sleeping with my wife, for drug trafficking. Greg was dead, but not because he'd helped them plan to steal my business, because he'd ripped off the wrong criminal. Justice would have been a family court judge who saw through Rebecca's act and protected my son. Justice would have been Derek and Linda and Greg facing consequences for their actual crimes against my family. What they got was karma. Dark, brutal karma delivered by the same criminal world they'd chosen to embrace. No, I finally said. I guess there isn't. Tommy came running into the kitchen, then holding up his Lego creation, a house with a garage and a little plastic man standing in the driveway. Look, Daddy, I built our house. That's awesome, buddy. Who's the little man? That's you. You're protecting the house from bad guys. I hugged him tight, breathing in the smell of his shampoo and feeling his small arms wrap around my neck. That's right, Tommy. Daddy always protects our house. Later that evening, after Tommy was asleep, I sat on my back porch with a beer, looking out at the property I'd built with my own hands. The house, the shop, the gardens Rebecca had planned, but I'd planted. All of it was mine now, free and clear. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Linda. I know what you did. I'm coming back for you. I read it twice, then deleted it and blocked the number. Let her come. Let them all come. I'd learned something important over the past year. I wasn't the man I'd thought I was. I wasn't the easygoing contractor who avoided conflict and tried to see the best in everyone. I was someone much more dangerous than that. I was a father who would do anything to protect his son, and a man who never forgot and never forgave betrayal. The belt incident had revealed who Rebecca really was, but it had also revealed who I was underneath the surface. And that man was someone you didn't want to cross. I finished my beer and went inside to check on Tommy one more time. He was sleeping peacefully, sprawled across his bed with stuffed animals scattered around him like guards. I tucked him in properly and kissed his forehead. Sleep tight, buddy. Daddy's got everything under control. And I did. Everything was under control, and it was going to stay that way. Because some lines, once crossed, change you forever. And once you cross them, you discover you're capable of things you never imagined. The belt that Rebecca raised against my son had been meant to teach him a lesson about consequences. Instead, it taught me one, and I was a very good